Broker Bulletin acknowledges the traditional custodians of all the lands across the country on which we record our podcast and pays its respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Welcome to the Broker Bulletin podcast, where better begins. Join us as we chat with brokers about what's working for them, what drives them, and the real challenges and wins that matter most right now.
Welcome back to the Broker Bulletin today. I'm Tom Caesar, Group Executive at L&G Asset Finance. And in this episode, we're diving into the journey of one of the biggest leaders and personalities of the asset finance industry, someone that I've personally learned a lot from and why they're a market leader and a business that many in our space look up to. Joining us is Matty Atkin from Atlas Broker. Thanks for taking the time, Matty. How are you?
Good, Tommy. Thanks for the kind words, mate.
They're the kindest words you'll probably get from me.
I'm not used to it, that's for sure.
But I'll be professional. I love your journey and I'm pretty excited to have you on here as a guest. But if we take you back to when you started Atlas back in 2011, and over those years, it's evolved into quite a diversified firm offering equipment finance, property finance, working capital solutions, commercial insurance, the works. You are truly a pioneer of building a diversified operation. What inspired you to embark on that sort of entrepreneurial journey back in 2011? And how did you envision the firm's growth to where it is today?
What inspired us? I mean, it was a group of mates who we'd all kind of worked together somewhere else, and we learned some lessons, some good, some bad from that place. And we wanted to really do our own thing, which is, I think, what most young entrepreneurial brokers want. You got to learn a bit first before you can go out and do it on your own. So we finally got the courage to do it. And when we did that, we just really wanted to build a business which was based on a really set of values, and that proposition would be all about delivering those values. So we didn't want to pretend to be something that we weren't. So that was at the core of how we started the business. And then where we thought we'd be, we always sort of wanted to be national. We always wanted to have a really broad offering, but that just sort of happened organically. So we didn't really go in with a set 5-year plan. We were going to be this, and this. We just knew that we're a bunch of guys that could broke, but we had no idea how to run a business. Like, that's just the honest God's truth. So we made so many mistakes along the way when we started, and we still make them today, but we just saw opportunities and just kept seizing them. So if you're entrepreneurial, I'm not sure that we are, but if you consider that we're entrepreneurial, then it's probably just about when opportunities presented themselves, we had a real good look at them, and then we just scouted a bunch and we just focused on the ones we thought we could do well. So that's how we led ourselves to this, what is now called diversified. We didn't call it back then. We just wanted to do different products.
In 2020, you consolidated the brands into the One Atlas brand. What prompted that decision, and what sort of impact did that have on your business?
I think at that point we had 4 different brands, it was a mess. And the reason was we tried to get Atlas, we were Atlas Equipment Finance. That was our first business name. And we wanted to do Atlas Insurance, but there was Atlas Insurance in Queensland, so we couldn't have it. So we started another brand called Plus 61 Insurance and Plus 61 Mortgages, and they were based on Australia's country code. So it was another word for national. So, and we thought it was really clever, but, a lot of people thought we only did, seniors insurance. It sort of confused a lot of people. And of course, when you've got multiple brands, it's also expensive to try and market it, multiple websites, all that sort of stuff. So we made the decision, I think it was just before COVID, that it made sense to consolidate the brand. We also bought a business up in Gosford. We just wanted to bring it all under the one umbrella to make it simpler so that our clients could they dealt with one brand, multiple people. We're a massive believer in specializations within the business. So once they dealt with Atlas Broker, then they could talk to the person who was an expert in that area. But to try and have 3 different businesses, 4 different businesses in the end with different brands, different websites, everything, it just confused everybody.
It's a common challenge that you see other groups go through where they try and separate the brands to have different identities. And sometimes at the start, it sounds good in theory, but when you execute on it, you've got different logos, different email addresses, different email accounts. And it's obviously quite a challenge. Your focus is on family-owned and operated businesses in Australia. Can you share how your niche focus and maybe a bit more about your niche has influenced your service offerings and your client engagement strategies?
For a start, a lot of people think broking is SME. And yeah, we get a lot of clients from SME, but I think SME is too narrow. So we came up with this concept of family-run businesses. So we got clients that turn over 150 million. You know, we deal with some councils, we deal with some private schools in one of our businesses. So then we do have these other markets. But the reality is if we stay in SME, it was too narrow. So we thought, what else are we looking at? What we're really looking at is families that run businesses. And those families tend to value advice. They like relationship. They want us to understand their business. So we just found our model is not about churning clients. Our model is about repeat. So given that you're on repeat, you want to get clients that value it. Those that value it are those we tend to found with people that we're dealing with the family, like dealing with owners, dealing with people who make decisions, and people who would call us on all types of stuff. I'm talking stuff like, I'm thinking of hiring someone. What do you reckon? You know, you hear about this trusted advisor scenario and it's bandied around a lot, but it's bullshit for a lot of businesses because they're just transactional. Whereas we found that if we could focus on the family element rather than the small or the medium bit, then we could deal with a single guy doing a fencer down the road, or we could deal with a $200 million company that's pretty got interesting structures and lots of requirements for finance. And it was just a really broad thing. So we also came out of the GFC was when we really were cutting our teeth and people who really specialised in industries, when those industries went to custard, they really struggled.
COVID, probably the exact same thing has happened over the last few years as well with people who have focused on some of those industries that have been hit.
I think that's true. I think COVID also, it exposed a few different business models. So those that were really focused on growth via client acquisition, interestingly enough, I think struggled. Those that focused on really in-depth relationships with referral sources flourished. So it was slightly different from our experience anyway. We kept it generalist to start with, and then we worked out, hang on, we're generalists. We want to be across all the industries that we can think that require, at that point, capital equipment, because that's all we did. How do you do that? Well, let's focus on family-run businesses for the reasons that I've already said. And it served us well. We do divert from it in a couple of instances. We bought a business which does a lot of private school funding, which in the end hasn't been the best acquisition we could have made, but you live and learn. And we still got that brand off to the side, but primarily we stick really fat to that family run business model.
Love it. It's all about winning the relationship and not the transaction.
Correct. That's exactly what our business is built on.
Love it. And you've been involved with CAFBA for a long time, since about, I think, 2015. You said in 2020, you took on the role as president. It's obviously a role you give a lot of time to, and it's time taken out of your business. What motivated you to take on that leadership role, and how's that experience, or how's your experience with Atlas informed your approach to CAFBA when you were in that role?
I had no desire whatsoever for CAFBA presidency. I had zero, not interest in it. I just didn't ever think it was something that I could do. So the best leaders that I know are able to have a laugh at themselves. They're pretty humble and they're not actually necessarily, they're ambitious, but they're not overtly ambitious. And I'd probably describe myself as that. So I went to CAFBA in 15 because I just wanted to learn off some amazing people and perhaps be able to contribute at that point for 5 years of experience in running a business, that we might be able to contribute to the conversation. Because believe it or not, at that point, I was only 40, I think, and was one of the young ones. So, had that different view on the world than perhaps some of the other guys. So that was sort of where I thought I could add value. And then David Gandolfo just tapped me on the shoulder one day and said, do you want to do the vice president role? And I was humbled. I rate David. He's a great man. And so for him to have that level of confidence in me, I was like, yes. And my other philosophy in life is that just say yes, because it's so easy to say no. And as soon as you start saying no, you turn into a boring old bastard, and I never want to be that. So I said yes, and I was lucky. I had amazing mentors in Gandolfo and Terry Moody, who's I'm lucky to count as personal friends. David Gill was a terrific CEO, great board around us, and it was an amazing journey. I hope I did it justice, because it's such an important role for the industry. And probably some people who aren't involved don't realise what's involved. And it's that stewardship, which now, Dom Lacerdo is taking over and doing a great job with, it's so important to make sure that self-regulation is maintained and our professional standards increase, and, all those sorts of things are super close to my heart. So I'm very proud of what we achieved. And as I said, but the idea of becoming CAFBA president was never on my radar.
But you just mentioned self-regulation. I think education and diversity would also have been some of those focal points during your tenure at CAFBA. How do you think these elements are shaping the future of the broking industry?
Oh, they're super important. how they're shaping the future of the industry. And I know
probably specifically in our ES space, obviously there's a different point in time to resi.
It is, and commercial too, not just EF. You're talking, commercial finance too. So, George Carram's heading up the committee for the professional standards scheme, which in my view is the single most important bit of reform we need to do in this industry. It will set us up for the next 50 years, and it will make sure that we're self-regulated using that instrument, which in turn, as commercial and asset finance brokers, will be considered as a profession, which has a whole heap of benefits, which you can go into. And if people want practical benefits, it will very likely reduce your insurance. So if people, if they want nothing else, to be able to get insurance firstly is going to get more difficult, but to be able to get it at a pretty reasonable rate, like an accountant firm would, or a lawyer or whatever, I think that's pretty important. So there's a whole raft of benefits, but if people want practical reasons, that's one.
And then if we look at mentoring in the asset space, we've had conversations about this in the past, and there's a big lack of mentoring in the asset finance space. I think we've spoken about, brokers coming and being able to do a matrix deal, but not being able to read, financials and a balance sheet properly and things like that. Obviously, education's a big part, but actually the mentoring side of it, how can the industry, lenders, CAFBA and brokers work together to solve that challenge in the future?
It's been spoken about at CAFBA level for a long time, and I think that there was some things. I stepped off the board about 6 months ago. There's some things in train I've been working on for a while, but there's got to be a willingness for guys who have been around for a while to get into that space. It's something that I will dip into. I think there will be more formal structures around it. I think as the industry matures, and a willingness to be able to show, we've got to have the ability first to attract young people who are looking for a career, which is what the PSS does. So then you start to get professionals that come out of uni or out of, those sorts of things, that they want career progression and mentoring. They want it. So then it opens up this whole opportunity. Now, is it a formal actual business where people can go and set up mentoring business, or is it less formal than that? Is it an association piece? I'm not sure. Perhaps it's elements of all of those things. But, I know there's a few guys that I talk to now. I don't really know how I became 50 and how I became experienced, but apparently it's happened. I love it. I love helping out. And I know a lot of the experienced guys feel the same way, and it's a really collegiate industry, the asset finance particularly. Commercial is too. So if I was giving one piece of advice to someone in the industry is when you start, is just get a good mentor. It's the most important thing you can do.
I think we underestimate people like yourself in the industry who someone might reach out to say, hey, can I have a coffee? And you probably don't even realise you're mentoring them over an hour and a half coffee. But I think we underestimate how receptive people like yourself are to want to give that advice and support and see young people flourish in our industry. I think it's something that the industry should be proud of.
It's interesting, mate, because it goes two ways. Like, there's a couple of young guys that I do have a beer or a coffee with, and I learn off them as much as they might learn off me, because there's this different way of thinking. Like when we started, we were the new breed and people thought we had our heads screwed. Why would you have a diversified firm? That's crazy. So, and now it's all tech and all this sorts of stuff. And I'm sitting here going, I know I need to learn about it. One of our core values is innovation, and I try my best, but these young guys they embrace it. And so for me, that's the bit I get. In return is from mentoring, I get stuff back too. So.
Well, speaking of technology, I think last year, you've been playing with a bit of AI. We've been having some good, healthy conversations about where it lies in our industry and the opportunities. And we're really scratching the surface and learning every day on it, as every industry is. But that's going to rapidly transform the whole finance industry. How are you looking to leverage some of those advancements and enhance your client experience and streamline your business operations?
Tech's at the core of the business. It's still a relationship business. I actually had this conversation just the other day with someone who was saying that why would you go sign up a client because everything's DocuSign these days or whatever. I'm firmly of the opinion that clients, especially in a relationship business like ours, they still want to know you. They still want to see you. They still want to know the names of your kids, and they want you to know the names of theirs. So that's the first thing I would say. I'm still a big believer in that model. But what I do believe is that technology sits in the background to actually make the experience better. So we use it to enhance our relationship business. Now, how we deliver that relationship piece will change. Maybe the timing of it will change, the regularity will change, the types of meetings you'll have will change, but we'll use AI and technology to make it smoother for the client by increasing productivity internally, by asking for documents in a particular way, for, all those sorts of things. We'll use it as a sales tool to understand where a client is in their cycle, to understand what else we can offer them, and those sorts of things. So I see it as a tool that will enhance our business. I don't see it as something that is a disruptor that will destroy our industry. I think if we can enhance it, so if we can use it in the right way, we'll get benefit from it. The one thing I would say, people might have heard me talk about this, is that I think the role of the broker probably changes a little bit. And I think our business, we're trying to position ourselves there, and that family-run business bit, that bit where your value advice, etc., won't go, but where you get your referrals from and how you get them will change. And then how you manage that referral relationship will change using technology. I think that's where the big change comes. I think the customer piece is still about relationship. I think the referral piece is about technology.
I think that relationship's the crucial bit, but then I think how that experience between the customer and yourself, it's going to change, because the way we expect to communicate with, an accountant, a lawyer, your broker, you even look at the health industry with telehealth, like it's changing so rapidly. And I think having these conversations with you, I do enjoy that, because we throw some pretty grand ideas out there, but it's pretty exciting to see what will happen over the next few years in this space.
Yeah, it's true. One thing I would say, people like some of the guys that are older than me, I think they're scared of it, and they don't need to be. As long as we evolve and change, there's some real upside with it.
I think if you look at the likes of a ChatGPT, and my mum using ChatGPT instead of Google now, I think if she can do that, anyone can.
No, you've got tech in your DNA. That's come from your mum.
You mentioned in a recent panel discussion that the best run broking businesses are going to get stronger. I mean, what characteristics define these top performing firms, and how do you think others can emulate that? And you've mentioned, the first thing before around winning the relationship, not the transaction. But, what are some of those other characteristics that emulate the success?
I think there's a lot of brokers that create an income stream rather than a business. That's the first thing I'll say. So the ones that are doing really well, the businesses that are growing, are actually putting best practice in about running business, not just about being brokers. So I think you really need a clear strategy and a clear direction, some strong leadership, great people, great tech, but also a willingness to adapt and change. So if you can sort of mold all that into something which works for you, there's opportunity there. But the best firms that I know of, if I'm really honest, have great people at the top who understand the industry. They're usually pretty fair. They usually got really good values. They want to make it quit, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they don't want to rip people off either. So it's about being fair and reasonable with your value proposition, and you charge margin according to the value that you provide.
And what excites you most about the future of our space and those opportunities over the next few years?
Oh, there's a whole raft of things. I still get a massive kick out of other guys starting their journey. So I love working with new people. I think the professionalisation of the industry is going to be pretty awesome. Like I look at that now and go, how cool that I could say to my son who's 12, you could become a professional commercial and asset finance broker. Like that to me is amazing. The level of standing that we would get compared to, I reckon when I started in the industry, it wasn't viewed that way. So I can see this journey. So I love that. From a personal point of view, I'm excited by my business. Like Atlas Brokers now, 13, 14 years old, and we're about to go through another growth phase. Like the presidency was amazing for me. I learned a lot, hopefully gave a bit back, but it did take a ton of time away. So now it's refocusing here, and we're looking for brokers left, right and centre. So we're going to really grow in that stage. So, and then I think there's a consolidation that'll come as well, which is pretty exciting, whether that by acquisition, mergers, natural attrition, I'm not sure, but so a business in our size, we're a mid-sized firm, and I'm looking forward to becoming a large firm. That's exciting for me.
You mentioned before that anyone joining the industry, you'd give them some advice around finding a mentor. What's one other piece of advice you'd give to a new broker joining the industry?
Learn. Don't think you know it all, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's probably the main one. I think a lot of people, when they're starting out, you kind of think you need to know everything. I can tell you categorically you don't, and you won't. So just do it. Make mistakes. You can usually fix it. Just get on with it.
Mistakes are the uni subjects to a degree.
Yeah, correct.
At the Broker Bulletin, we're all about finding those 1% improvements that lead to the big wins. I mean, on your personal side of things, what's one small thing you do every day that has the biggest impact on your performance?
There's a few. I get a good sleep.
You've only got one. You've only got one.
Yeah, no, you know me. I don't just do one. I think sleep's, it sounds cliched and people probably wouldn't think that's the answer, but it is. For me, it's sleep, exercise and life balance. So anyone who'll know me, I know I travel a shitload, and they think I have too many holidays, but the reality is I use those holidays to refresh. And so I would just say to everyone, I know when you particularly start, you got to work bloody hard, but don't ignore your health.
To wrap up, I think my biggest takeaway from today's conversation, I think you hear about values from different people and businesses, but seeing the way that you live your values with your people, but not only your people, your customers, I think it's a testament to the success of your business and something everyone should take away around making sure those values come to life. So thank you for joining us, Matty. And thanks everyone for listening. If you have a topic that you want us to discuss, please email us at brokerbulletin@lmg.broker or DM us on Instagram, which is the handle is at lmg.broker, and our producer will make sure we answer it ASAP. If you like this episode, make sure you rate and follow us on your favourite pod store. Thanks again, Matty.
Good on you, Tom. Anytime, mate. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Broker Bulletin. We would hate for you to miss an episode. Subscribe to Broker Bulletin in your favourite podcast app. Has this episode been helpful? We'd love you to rate and review us. It'll help us deliver content that's useful to you and help others discover us. If you have great ideas for topics worth tackling or have burning questions you'd like addressed on an upcoming episode, reach out. Links in the show notes. See you next time.